Hi, I'm Mike Hutjens, Extension Dairy Specialist at the University of Illinois. This module will discuss the world dairy industry. Our learning objectives include discussing the three types of world dairy production systems and their characteristics. Next, to list the major dairy producing regions in the world. Next, discuss two factors that will favor dairy production. And finally, look at those countries that have the most cows, the most milk per cow, and total milk yield. Basically, there are three types of dairy system. The first one we'll call intensive. Characteristics of intensive include high milk production, typically 60 to 90 pounds of milk per cow per day. High input costs, meaning that we're going to feed a fair amount of grain and high quality forages because we're trying to optimize the amount of milk production on these cows. And of course, with higher milk productions, we're trying to make as much money as we can based on the system of more milk volume. Countries such as Japan, the United States, Canada, Italy, the Netherlands certainly would fall into this category with high milk, very aggressive milk production systems. Second type we will call low input. The focus on this system is low production costs. Generally, this is associated with pasture-based feeding systems and very little grain being fed to cows at all, and usually in fairly temperate environments. Cows produce less milk. Levels of 30 to 40 to 50 pounds of milk is very common per cow per day. The focus on making money is low costs, where in the intensive system it was more milk volume. Countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, Argentina, these countries would fall into this category, which are basically pasture-based feeding systems, and usually farmers are milking more cows per full-time equivalent compared to the other system. The third system we'll discuss is what we call subsistence. This basically is the family dairy herd or cow. Usually characteristics include very low milk production. 10, 12, 15, 20 pounds of milk a day would be very common. In many cases, local breeds are brought in and crossbreeding are involved. So we're not using the high genetic breeds. The feed is pretty marginal. In many cases, it's harvested from the road ditch or from areas that are just available where feed can be brought in to these animals on the facility. In many cases, family is the source of labor, but also the family uses this extra milk as a source of income and also food for the family. And in many countries, it's the ladies who do all the milking on these farms. It's not uncommon that the cattle are housed in the same building as where the family lives. The number of animals are small. Herd sizes 3, 4, 5, 6 cows are very common. And certainly in many parts of the world, the water buffalo and some of the local breeds are very characteristic of these production systems. Countries such as the Dominican Republic, Egypt, African countries, Russia certainly would fall into this category here, and it's pretty much a family-based system. Next, let's take a quick look to see, well, where is the milk in the world being produced? The heavy hitter, the big gorilla, of course, is the European community. Almost 50% of the milk comes from these countries in the EU. North America, which includes both Canada and the U.S., contribute right around 17% milk. This will vary from year to year depending on conditions, crop production, and factors like that. So the United States is not the big milk production that some people assume it is. If we look at Central and South America, again, those include countries such as Mexico, Argentina, Brazil. Another 17% milk in the world is produced here. Then we look at the Asia and Middle East, about another 15% milk coming from there. And then Oceania, which only contributes 4% of the milk, but they are the world leaders on milk price setting, and that would include such countries as New Zealand and Australia. And so why they produce the lowest valued milk in terms of cost, certainly they don't produce a large amount of milk, so their impact on the world milk supply is modest. Next, just kind of look at some countries, and again, we won't be testing you on this, but it gives you a pretty good flavor, a look at the variation. Here we are at the U.S., about 9 million cows in the United States. They're averaging just short of 20,000 pounds of milk. We just moved south of the border, and notice Mexico almost has 60% as many cows as we have, but they're only averaging about 3,200 pounds of milk, and that is because many of their farms are not very intensive. You can see the Canadians compete very effectively here. They have about 1/10 the number of cows we have and produce slightly less milk per cow. And part of that is because they have a quota system which regulates how much milk farmers can produce. We then can look at Russia, which has as many cows as the United States, but very low milk production per cow. And India, of course, has lots of cows and water buffalo, but very low milk production. So you can see every country has different characteristics and aspects to the dairy performance program. Let's just take a quick look to see who are the leaders in these various categories. You'll notice the data is slightly old, and that's because getting these information really lags behind on the world. So these will change from time to time. Currently, Israel is the winning country. They average almost 22,000 pounds of milk. They are Holstein-based. They are in kibbutz, very intensively raised. They import a lot of grain from the United States and Canada, so they really are very aggressive in terms of milk production per cow. And you can see the U.S. is second, Saudi Arabia is third. And total milk yield as a country, the United States is first, with somewhere around 77 million metric tons being produced. You can see Russia and India are third. Now, in terms of total animals or cows, India, as we mentioned earlier, is the big winner with nearly 31 million animals in their country. Brazil and Russia is third, and China is rapidly entering this picture because China is trying to increase milk production very aggressively in the world. Now, we might ask, well, where will milk production occur in the future? And two major factors will probably influence this. One, where is the major grain areas? In other words, feed resources. And you can see a very large list. Certainly the Corn Belt in the U.S. quickly comes to mind. And of course, Illinois and Iowa sit right in the middle of it as far as that goes. The Pampas in Argentina, the Ukraine has a very large wheat belt over there in Eastern Europe, Western Canada with their massive amounts of wheat fields up in the plains up there, and of course Australia. So certainly one characteristic of where milk may be produced is where there's lots of grain and byproducts that are going to pop up. The other one, of course, will be a major forage resource, and of course pasture comes to mind very, very quickly. And such countries as New Zealand, Argentina, Ireland, and Brazil come to mind, and so they will also compete because they have a very good supply of very inexpensive forages available. So this is probably where the milk is going to be produced, or certain countries that are going to try to develop these kinds of feeding programs. So in summary, we discussed the three types of world dairy systems: intensive, subsistence, and low input. We talked about the major milk producing regions of the United States. We should remember that the United States produces about 1/6 of the milk, where the EU produces almost half of it. We discussed factors that will really favor milk production, and that included such things as grain sources and forage sources. And then we talked about which countries had the most cows, the most milk per cow, and milk yield. Well, that completes this module. Thanks. Have a great day.